Good evening, everybody. Welcome to a beautiful Wednesday evening or morning or afternoon, wherever you happen to be. And welcome to Looking Deeper. This is Denise King Francisco, and I am in the company of Sandra Herrick. Hey, Sandy.
How you doing, Dana?
I'm doing. How are you doing?
Well, I was just sharing. It's interesting. Our show is about all the things that it gets to be about. But I'm carrying a heavy heart tonight. A very dear man in our community, I found out today, passed away yesterday by slipping on the ice and getting a brain bleed. And so I want to dedicate our show to the spirit of Reggie, who literally is one of those great big glimpses of a human who did everything for everybody, and he will be profoundly missed. The good die young.
Aw, I'm sorry to hear that. And
thank you.
Yeah, and bless his journey.
Thank you.
Wow.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So fast.
And we never seem to know, do we?
No, we do not.
Sometimes we can have hints, but oftentimes we just never know.
And it's one of those things where he was. This is a spectacular story. One day, Bobby and I were driving down, and there were lots of his friends in the barn area, actually under the shed of his house. And we stopped because one of the pigs was giving birth, and it was a great big mama. I mean, we're talking 100-something pounds of pig.
Wow.
And they have these little bitty babies, and they were catching them and whatnot. And one was born, and they found it underneath her, and it wasn't breathing. And it was like I couldn't look, and I started to walk away. And Bobby said, "Sandy." And it was like, and I turned back and literally breathed into this pig. Took it in my hands, gave it CPR, and it was one of those things where in an instant from being completely still to having life. And what makes me walk away because I don't want to see something not be there, to turn around and call it in. So Reggie's a big person in my life, even though he wasn't in my life a lot. There's, you make friends with people out of things that when you live on the farm are life and death, and it's just the dignity of the experience of life and death.
Aww.
So it's a good day. If his spirit is free, God bless.
Mm-hmm.
God. Okay.
Well,
how are you?
Well, good. And, kind of looking forward to the subject that we're talking about tonight. And the subject matter is what's next is now. Capital N-O-W.
Exactly. It's, when we talked about it, we've been talking about when is next, how is next, what we do is next over the years. And next is now, for me, when I felt it, first and foremost, I want to acknowledge how much has happened in the past 3 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
You and I were on the phone when there was the takeover of the Capitol.
Uh-huh.
You and I were kind of like, oh my, look at that. Oh my God, look at that. Oh my God. Oh my God, look at that. I mean, that's something to look at.
That was something to look at, all right.
And it brought us to a next.
Mm-hmm.
If we don't bring anything other than the reality of energy, we were connected, having a conversation as next activated before our very eyes.
Mm-hmm.
And then the inauguration next. And then there's that place of we can feel the vibration. I mean, I don't know about you, but I could feel at 12 o'clock, actually, when the plane lifted. And again, this is not political. This is not even opinion about anybody. It's witnessing that we wait for something. And then all of a sudden, there it is. Something's next. And it's something that's so profound and something so explicit energetically. it's important for us not to miss and find out what happens to us because of it.
Mm-hmm.
What are some of the next that you experienced you were literally in just in the past 3 weeks?
Just in the past 3 weeks. Oh, my land. Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that was a doozy. That day was really a doozy. Well, just yesterday, what's next? Elise having surgery and having it, move back and back and back, and finally she had the surgery and home last night. And with this particular surgery, it's what's next for her,
Exactly.
as a woman. And so that was what's next, watching my daughter go through this phase of what is next for her. So that's what's next, and here it is now, and it's not normally something that happens until a woman is much older, but it happened now.
Exactly.
And so you have to adjust to that happened now. It's here, and what does that mean? It means that it visited a little early, but it's here.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And there's that place of stepping into what we wait for and have the anxiety for, the hope for, or the anticipation of. It's amazing to be able to deal with the energy of being with it.
Yeah.
And I think because sometimes there's a letdown where it's like, oh, it wasn't what I thought it was going to be.
Uh-huh.
Or, okay, there we are, and it's still not what it's supposed to be. Or, is that all there is? Or, oh my God, the relief, and there's air.
Mm-hmm. Right. I think the biggest, for me, the biggest thing that's now, that was going to be the what's next, is this phase of the Aquarian age. The return of the mystic, the return of the seer, the return of the antiquarian teachings and wisdom. We were always saying, well, last night in class, or Monday night in class, you mentioned that you've been in metaphysics and spirituality, I should say, for 50 years. And for myself, it's been, let me do the math here, it's been about, 28 years. And in my 28 years and in your 50 years of this journey, we talked about the time is coming.
Right.
It's next. That's going to happen next. And we need to be prepared, and we need to hold the light for what's next. And here it is.
And here it is. Here it is. And, I could honestly say it felt like it entered at the inauguration. And for me, and I will speak about this from the spirit, again, not the political, is that the Aquarian, I'm maneuvering myself, I had to plug in my phone. The Aquarius really is about the masculine and the feminine, not the either or.
Yes.
It is about and here we have, for the first time in our leadership in America, a feminine and masculine presence. And it also brings the verbiage that we're starting to hear, that it's about a we, that it is about inclusive. It's not about the divide. And there's a lot to do, but we are now in the vibration that speaks of it and initiates it from that place of wisdom,
mm-hmm.
and also from the knowledge it's time. This is the time. And it couldn't have been done 3 weeks ago.
Exactly. So here we are. It's right on time.
Exactly.
We're in time, and it's all on time.
Exactly. And therefore, there's that place of when next is really here. I think it's important for us to take a look at, well, what was our expectation? What was our prayer? What was our hope? What was our need? And take inventory so that we're aware of being in the next and we're present with it. we're not distracted by it or let down by it because it's not the bing, bang, boom. I think one of the things I want to acknowledge is when Katy Perry was singing, your fireworks, all that energy, all that kinetic energy, all that fireworks, all that, the sparkling glow. Again, it was a celebration literally in the atmosphere with color and fire and that explosion of almost like cutting the dimension, cutting through the veils. And again, I really want everybody to know that this is not political. It's energetic. It was a celebration of an epoch, of an episode of psychology. What else did you experience at Divide and Ignite? Or Leave and Ignite?
Well, for me, it felt as though we were leaving Pisces, the Piscean age, and fully embracing Aquarius, which is the return of the female to the table.
Yes.
That it was always said, long time ago, right, 8 fires ago, that there would come a time when the ladies of the realm would rejoin the knights of the realm, when the queen would return to the king. And it's not either or, it's both.
Exactly.
And the other thing that I found about that entire inauguration ceremony, Lily and I were like watching the whole thing simultaneously, texting one another, the whole thing. And one of the things that she and I noticed almost simultaneously, the other element that didn't escape us was that the color suffragette white was worn by so many of the women, performers and speakers, etc., that evening, because the suffragette movement right now in the West has just realized its first woman, right, at the top there. And so seeing the suffragette white and all the symbologies of Aquarius, because like you, I look at it as here we are really fully embracing, or here it is, whether you embrace it or not, the age of Aquarius.
Exactly.
Spectacular.
And to think how many years have been where the suffragettes wore white as their uniform.
Yes.
And risked their lives.
You bet they did.
Literally risked their lives. Were mocked, were murdered, were excommunicated, were shamed and shunned because they wanted to vote.
Yes. Yes. And even that came in segments, right? Not all women could vote all at the same time. It came in segments, but it came. And to see all of that celebrated, for me, it was like a festival of Aquarius.
Yes. Yes. And there's that beauty of knowing that in the festivities, for me, it was like an elixir. It was the medicine of knowing something was clearing out, something was making space, and what kind of a vacuum does fireworks make? And they even talked about the incredible noise, the ricochet of the fireworks, because there was an atmospheric low. And so as they went up and the boom and the bang happened, it ricocheted off of the low pressure and expanded outward.
Yes.
And so it literally sonically boomed vibrationally. And if there's anything I know about drums and fireworks, is I feel them in my solar plexus. That vibration enters into me.
Mhm.
And so even watching the program and feeling it, I could feel the vibration bring a quiver, not even a stir, literally a quiver. Somebody hit the tuning fork.
That's a good way to put it. And created a portal.
Exactly.
Right? For the rest of Aquarius to enter. And I'm also struck by, during the course of the past few weeks, 3 weeks, is that now the head of the Department of the Interior is a Native American woman, Deb Haaland.
Wow.
That's stunning.
Yeah.
It's stunning. And again, when I look at it, I think to myself, all of the old ones saying that this time was going to come from their ancestral home, wherever they happen to be, are looking and saying, yep, everything is right on time.
And it's about time.
And it's about time, yeah.
It was a long way to got it. I was tapping my toes there.
So it's fascinating how we're seeing everything. And as far as my life, for me, time has sped up.
Yeah.
And the quickening of what I think and what I feel and what I wish to create, and in the act of doing, I am able to create and manifest far more quickly than ever before. What about you, Sandy?
I do. I even had a dream of it last night where I was talking about my practice, and it was like, well, yeah, I mean, there's this gathering and the people are coming and da-da-da-da-da. And today it was like, again, it's like, oh, there's the phone, it's ringing. Oh, it's something is pouring in because the consciousness is ready or even feels safe to explore the dynamic.
Exactly.
Yeah, and I want to be able to acknowledge that it has not been safe to explore the feminine on many, many levels for many, many reasons for eons.
Yes.
And something is now safer or ready to feel the safety and become safe. Maybe that's really what it's more about, to become safe.
Mm-hmm.
I think feeling safe, nurtured by a feminine, to the feminine, for the feminine, is something we all yearn for. There's that place of once that vibration of the patriarchal, that we have to be obedient, we have to be in line, we have to, as a woman, instead of be at the table, we have to serve the table. And it's that place of yearning, if I was going to be really, really honest, to feel safe in my femininity, to be as wise as my feminine is, without me necessarily knowing that wisdom until it is necessary and it appears as it's needed.
Mm-hmm. Or having to couch it in a way that won't offend.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Or get you killed.
Yeah. There is that.
There is that. And, it's amazing how you know things, I know things. But let's talk about
Yeah.
It's true.
Yeah.
What is your experience when you channel something from the feminine and it comes out of that space of the super subconscious, and you just spoke wisdom from the feminine soul, not just something you know?
Well, in those moments, there is a feeling of, I don't even want to say connectedness, I want to say of being in the divine feminine.
Yeah.
And because we're in that, we are that, we're all of these magnificent components, and so often we talk about it as though it's outside of us. When we are owning that part of who we are in the collective. And when it comes through as a bit of wisdom or artwork or inspiration, it's as though it simply came from a higher place of my own soul.
Right. Right. There's I agree with you completely. In that place of knowing that there is an intelligence or a conduit that all of a sudden quickens, again, like the tooth fork. It's something strikes it, and the vibration moves, and the quiver rattles through. Or, when I get the goosebumps on my goosebumps, or when emotion comes through us, uncontrollable emotion.
Mm-hmm.
It's that place of the collective and sitting in it and realizing I'm included.
Yeah.
I'm truly included.
Mm-hmm.
And we don't always feel that.
No.
We don't always trust that. And it's an emotion because it's literally filled with love.
Mm-hmm.
And the way I experience that love is it's some kind of eternal love. It's not, oh, I feel loved. It's like, whoa,
Mm-hmm.
I'm loved.
Yeah. And not a wimpy love.
No.
It's strong, and sometimes the potency of the feminine can be shocking in its tenacity, strength, depth, breadth, whatever you want to call that. It can be intimidating and scary for some.
Yeah. Well, it puts us on notice.
Yeah.
And, for me, when it puts me on notice is that there's that place of wherever I am in that moment, or when that moment brings me to that place, it allows me to know I'm bigger than I think I am or hope to be.
Mm-hmm.
That there's a vastness out there or in me.
Mm-hmm.
That maybe is part of going home, being home.
Mm-hmm.
That's bigger and greater than my physicality.
Yeah. Yes. Well, and I think that the shock and alarm for some people, hey, Del.
Oh, my God. My heart.
Lady Hawk and Lily and Jess, they're all in the chat room.
Hello.
When we talk about the divine feminine, or just the feminine, she's been missing, or I should say underground, for so long that her arrival for some is shocking. For some, it's not pleasant. Hey, Marianne. It's good to have you on board as well. For some, it's overpowering and unwelcome. And yet, she's right on time. It's all right on time. And Lady Hawk is saying, I have definitely asked, are you sure you have the right person lately? Hey, Donna. Cousin Donna's on as well. Yeah.
Hi, Donna.
It's as though she's been waiting to come out of the shadows. And whether we're talking about the return of the white buffalo calf woman, or we're talking about the return of the goddess, we're talking about the return of the feminine to her rightful place. And it's so exciting to me. And I see that it has such wonderful potential for men and women.
Excuse me. Yes.
To be able to express the feminine aspects.
Yes.
Yeah.
And, you're talking about the release, the opening, the quickening.
Mm-hmm.
And for everybody that knows that I had major horse medicine happen to me in September, when I literally was on the tallest horse I've ever been on in my life, 30 some odd years with horses, and, not even a hangnail. And then all of a sudden, it's like I had the premonition that I would fall, and all the damage I did to the interior of my body. When people ask me about it now, I'm very clear it was a big thing, but it wasn't a big thing. And I want to be able to express it with the pain was a liberation, not it. I did not implode. Something cracked so I could come out. And I literally have expressed it as I psychically, energetically, in tracking ancestors and all this, that there was finally a crack in the Iron Maiden that I was confined in. And that the breaking of my ribs, I broke my ribs after the cracking, 11 ribs, and then 3 broke in their own timing. Talk about next. When I had the intuition of it, when I had the journey of it, that next, now this is, the break happened. The crack happened. The freedom became the next. And I think it's important that we let everybody really be able to experience that not all freedom comes at the expense of feeling liberated.
Mm-hmm.
That there is that journey. If you're going to crack an egg, something does have to break.
Mm-hmm.
If you're going to break out of something, what do we do to ourselves to have the courage to break out of it? How do you get your breath? How do you really allow yourself to have the courage to go, no matter what, it's time to break through, and then to be on the other side with it and know that you don't ever have to go back. There may be melancholy, there may be grief, there may be relief, there's many, many things. But when we stand in now is the next, there's that place of the obligation, the consequences of knowing that you have had some desire or even resistance to be there, or it resisted you to get there.
Mm-hmm.
What experience can you share when you know that there was resistance from the future for you to get there?
Oh, the one that just flashed before my eyeballs and my third eye was when I was 32 years old, and I met with Sonia Choquette in Chicago because there was just something different about me. And I was at a point in my life that if somebody wasn't going to fully explain why it is that I see people who are supposed to be dead and why I see beings that have never been human, other than what, Father Kessler shared with me when I was 15, I knew that what was next needed to be now. And as it so happened, I ended up in Sonia's living room in Chicago. And from that point, I made a phone call to the Archdiocese in Grand Rapids. And the woman who answered the phone was actually a college, she went to college with me at Davenport University. And she said, "Oh, Denise, why are you calling today?" And I told her, I said, Monica, I need somebody within the Archdiocese to really talk to me about my clairvoyance and clairaudience. And she said, well, yeah, of course. And I heard her yell, "Hey, Father Phil Shangra, my friend Denise is on the phone and she needs to talk to somebody about the fact that she's clairvoyant. So who does she call about that?" "Oh, well, she has to call Charmaine at the Dominican Center." Well, I made the phone call to Charmaine, who, as it turns out, was my brother Tim's catechism teacher, right? And I had to go through testing, like an entire ream of paper before we had our meeting, so that they could discern whether I was real or not. And so the day came when I received the phone call. We read all of the paperwork, and I need to meet with you. How about this date at this time? And now the Dominican Center is literally maybe 3 miles from the newspaper. I was driving a brand new Buick, and I made my way up the hill, up Michigan Hill, to the Dominican Center, and my car died.
Of course.
right smack dab in the middle of Michigan Ave, right there in
my
front of
God.
DeVos Children's Hospital. It died. And in my mind, I thought, am I not supposed to do this? Or am I
wow.
supposed to do it, but I'm being challenged?
Right.
Well, when I got to the Dominican Center and, Charm and I looked at each other and laughed because we knew each other from catechism, I explained to her what happened, and she said to me, you need to understand that every time we're ready for the next chapter in our spiritual development or spiritual life, we will always be challenged by opposing forces. And I remember that after all of these years. And it has proven itself to be true since then.
Right.
But it didn't, well, you probably know that I'm, a determined woman. And so Todd is laughing. He's sitting in the chair in here and he's laughing.
Maybe determined doesn't quite
cut it. Yeah. But yes, Sandy, it's amazing how when the next is becoming the now, there can be a pushback.
Right. And I think it's very important to offer the compassion, the reality, and the matter-of-factness of just that we feel like, oh, my God, I'm so close. Why now?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, my God, I just got here, and what the? And, or to feel like that wall is the last breath and you just don't have it to push.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when it's not about faith.
Mm-hmm.
It's about the wisdom that something needs to come from you that breaks the very barrier that would insist you don't exist.
And isn't it amazing how the circumstances in our lives will line up to provide that opening or that space? And I think about this, for years I would not do the DNA test. I didn't know, I didn't need to bother with that. And so Todd, for my birthday, bought me this kit.
Good man.
Uh-huh. I sent it in, and it all came back, and I thought, well, that kind of confirms what I've always suspected. And the next thing I knew, I had a Facebook message from my cousin Danielle. And I sat there, Sandy, before I looked at it or answered it. I sat there because I knew that it was happening now. And was I ready for it? And the fact of the matter is that everything had lined up in my personal life, as you know,
right.
That the timing was superb.
Exactly.
And we can look back at times when the next becomes, well, here I am, ready or not.
Exactly.
And we can look back and go, look at how all of the puzzle pieces came together.
And why then rather than when?
Exactly. Donna says thank you. Donna King. Yeah. Yeah.
Amazing.
It is amazing.
It is amazing. And, there's that place of the domino effect where things need to line up. And our ego at times, our will, our ambition, our assumption literally does get in the way at times with what it is that lines up and said, next will be here, whether you're ready or not. So get ready.
Mm-hmm.
And be aware for what is going to be next, not just demand it be something you want. Go ahead.
Have you ever had the precursor, the precognition come to you in a dream that what's next is coming? So get your hat ready to put it on your head.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I've had dreams where I used to journal. I mean, oh my God, I was a furious journaler. And they're literally one of the greatest dreams I ever had. I was up in Canada, and I was on the ledge of this stucco building with my father, who had already passed away, with me. And it's like, first and foremost, it's like, oh, damn, Daddy, put it down. I mean, we're on the ledge. Am I going to die? Where are we? And he said, no, lean back, lean back. And I leaned back, and the sun was on me. And this huge tidal wave was coming. I mean, massive. And I just looked at it and looked at my father. And my father, and I just said, what is that? And he called it something. I wrote down the name. I'm not going to say the name because it's all sorts of things that are important in my life and all blah, blah, blah. But the name in the dream couldn't make sense to me until the reality of the dream came into daylight, and the tidal wave that came to me was the name of the person that was given to me in the dream that I didn't know at that time.
Wow.
And it was like, and it was a tidal wave of energy that changed my life. And that was the next that I was in and had no control over, because it wasn't something I thought would happen or wanted to happen or even consider happening, and it happened. And I think it's important for us to all know that next at times is like, God bless Reggie. He goes and just does something he does every single day, to take a pig and put it on the trailer to bring it home, and he falls and his life is done. That the simplicity of routine, all of a sudden you're here, you step there, and next exists. And I think of his wife, God bless, her next is here, and that's gasping. Mm-hmm. It's not fresh air.
Mm-hmm.
So next is sometimes the surprise.
Mm-hmm.
Next is sometimes the disappointment. I mean, I think it's very important to be able to know that when the next comes and we're in disappointment, that disappointment keeps us from the joy of thinking we were safe from ever having to be disappointed.
That's important.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's talk about that, because that's the emotional gasp of, how can we not stay safe? How could this possibly be happening?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, or the disappointment in what we hold is part of what's next.
Right.
And how do we deal with that disappointment? You know, whether it's the end of our health as we know it, or life as we know it, or a dream that we thought was coming next.
Right.
And how do you reconcile that sometimes we're just not supposed to know, or it's just not supposed to happen, or maybe not yet? That can be hard.
And therefore we have the human experience.
Yes.
And I think part of what we're talking about in the human experience is that it's the greatest surprise of all.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Being human is outrageous.
It is.
I don't think I've ever quite said it just like that. But it's kind of, when I kind of look at it, kind of outrageous to be human.
It is outrageous to be human. And you know what's interesting in my work, as I watch, the world unfold around me, there's this common theme that runs through my psyche because of my experience. Call me a medium, or whatever you want to call that, seer. That truly, in my 58 years of conversing with people who have already made their journey home, no one ever says, "I'm so glad I was an ass." Right? I'm so glad I was angry all the time. I'm so glad I took everything personally. I'm
Right.
so glad I was mean to my neighbor and every living thing.
Right.
And I think about that because when people come through to me, which is constant and continuous, even in between clients, there's a common theme from nearly every person that I speak with in spirit, that they wish they would have been kinder, more open-minded, would have been more kindly with their words, maybe set some boundaries. You see what I'm saying? That they would have been kinder to animals, whatever it happens to be. And sometimes I remember those things and I want to take that into my next. As I continue on, what did I learn from someone who came to me today or during a client session? What happened? And I think that that's really important because sometimes what's next and happens now is passing.
Right.
And so when I'm living my life, rather than to get my knickers in a knot about things that are out of my control, I try not to. I'm a Scorpio, so it's not always easy. But
Right.
I do take pause and think to myself, so Dana, what are you going to drag from this life into the next? Because we're going to be like Jacob Marley, right, with those dangly chains and bad attitude, if you don't let some of this stuff go and consider what it is that you want to bring into the next. And I really started thinking about that when I had the stroke in 2005. What do you want to take into the next?
Right.
I was the biggest, baddest ass that anyone... Do you really want that? Because you're bound to that. You're bound to that thought when you leave here.
Right.
And here's what I say to people. If you love somebody, tell them that you love them. Because you know why? It's way easier to say, Sandy, I love you, face to face, over Zoom, over Spreaker, than to have to find somebody who can do it for you once you're dead.
Right.
Because a lot of times, Sandy, almost all times it seems like, when somebody comes through, oftentimes they will say, I wish I would have told you that I loved you more.
Right.
Don't you have that experience?
When I do clients, it's an amazing phenomena because the time before the client exists, the time with the client exists, and then the time after the client exists. They're literally the before, during, and the after. And each one is very much, I'm living my life and then I'm in the next. And when I'm in that next, I'm in that quadrant of energy that is all about the love.
Yeah.
Either the lack of it, the need of it, or how do we deal with it, or how do we become a part of it? How do we express it?
Yeah.
And it is the greatest melting pot of my psyche, my heart, and my humanness to be in that moment, because I find I'm teaching and being taught all at the same time.
Yes, that's a great way to put it.
Thank you. And in that experience, it's like my mind whips into like the brilliance that's being experienced, the heart that's being expressed, the volumes of wisdom that are being exchanged. And then when that's over and the next is just back into the humanness, it's like it's a very different vibration of love. But it's not as amplified as it was in that moment of the session.
Yeah.
And it's I agree with you. In session, that love, people unzip. They open up completely. They're available for it and even surprised by the magnificence of its presence.
Yes.
You've done it, I have done it when we talk to people and they just uncontrollably start to cry or feel the goosebumps or are struck by the awe of the emotion because there's something raw in the room and it is a truth, a presence, a love.
Yes.
And I believe in that moment that is the next that takes us out of our lack of into the being with.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And it's an imprint. It's not something that maybe, for myself, I'll take it. It stays, it lingers, but it doesn't last. Because in our humanness, it's like, oh, I'm having a bad day. Woe is me. And it's like I have to recapture it, or it has to reintroduce itself to me, or that it's different living my human life than it is sitting with a client and being in that spiritual dynamic.
Yeah. Mhm. Yeah.
And so that next is, interestingly enough, I know you and I have that same capacity of it is what I exist for.
Mhm.
That moment in the serving and the being served in that spirit. And my existence is truly in my life.
Yes.
But I exist for that space.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's pretty intense to really be able to know that love, that next is part of the reason I love doing the work, is because in that next moment there's going to be such love.
Mm-hmm.
Even if somebody doesn't know it.
Exactly. So just remember Jacob Marley, everybody. Try not to drag too much of the human condition, right, into the next.
Luggage at home.
Yeah, exactly. Leave that baggage and those chains to home. Don't be dragging it. And that is the truth, because in the next you do not know. Say you love somebody, and don't just make it up. If you don't love somebody, I'm not just saying get out there and tell everybody you love them. But if you do love somebody, say it, show it, be with it. And that was something that I had to learn, right?
Right.
To be able to say that. That was not a phrase that I grew up with by any stretch. It was not a phrase that I heard growing up. And that's okay, not everybody did. So it was something that I learned to do. And a lot of it, I will be honest, of course, it came when Elise and Dane arrived. And for the first time in my life, I had two biological relatives, right, that I could lay my hands on. These two little beings. And so I smothered them with I love you. And I still do, as you know.
Yeah.
But the whole point in that is sometimes we have to learn how to say that. And that's okay.
It's also trusting that it's available to be with.
Yes.
I think this is a very important thing because, as you know, love is not always available to be with, even if you have love.
Yes.
So having love to give sometimes is the loneliest thing in the world when it's not available to receive.
Yes.
And that gets confusing because then where is the imprint of love? So you can identify it as real, valid, and worth interacting with. Truly being worth interacting with it.
Mm-hmm.
I think one of the crises of humanity is that we are not always imprinted with love, even though we have it in us, and therefore we have no ability interacting with it, and we're awkward, we're clumsy, we don't trust it, we don't know how it works, and so when you see it, it's like, what? Huh?
Yeah. Cheesy.
Yeah.
Cheesy. Yeah.
I don't like Hallmark. Why bother getting a card?
Me either.
Yeah.
I'm not the Hallmark movie watcher either. I'm just going to say. I know you're shocked.
I know. And there's that beauty of when someone really is in the presence of the next, which has the love in it. The Aquarian age has the love in it.
Mm-hmm.
It takes time to be able to trust you're included. You're available.
Mm-hmm.
And it intends to involve you. It doesn't just grab you and say, get over here. It says, you're here. Pay attention to where you are.
Yeah.
This is it.
Yeah. So have you ever found yourself being pushed into the next and you just didn't want to go and you're the one dragging your heels and everything around you crumbles until what's next is the only available option?
More times than I want to explain. I'm a cranky traveler on occasion. and I say that with the it's I don't want to go to the dentist, but I gotta go. And then when you get there, it's like, oh, But I will be specific. One of the very first times Spirit spoke to me about it was time to leave was when it was time to leave my home, and like I didn't belong in my village anymore. And I thought, okay, I'll get up and I'll go to California. And it was kind of, and this is so important because it was the stir. And all of a sudden there was an earthquake, and I went, I ain't going out there. But it was the imprint of the beckoning. It was the reckoning. It was the time when Spirit came and said, I'm going to put a beacon and you will see it, you will resist it. I resist it because as much as I wanted it, I didn't even know how to do it. And that frustration of not knowing how to do it or if I would be safe dragged my heels, kicking and screaming. If I had gone then, it would have been very different. But then, this is one of those things, in the next 3 years before I did go to California was everything that showed me, almost like coming down to the fine print. You don't belong, you don't belong, you don't belong, you're done.
Mm.
It was no longer a choice. It was a necessity.
Wow.
And so the process of elimination was agony.
Mm-hmm.
Because I watched my life narrow and become more narrow and
mm-hmm.
become more narrow until finally it was like, I gotta go.
Yeah. Del Marie is sharing in the chat room. She's saying, it's amazing that the topic is of loving more. I just received a friend request from a lost child that came home from being adopted out years ago. He was referred to me for questions. Unexpectedly, I said, welcome home, and know that you are loved. He said that was the first time anybody had said that to him since he came back to our people. Strange that he was referred to me. It's absolutely perfection.
Exactly.
That he was referred to you, Del. Welcome home.
Good Lord. And there's the beauty of the mystery of next. It's like, how did the person know? How did she know? And then all of a sudden you face each other and next happened. And you don't ever have to go back.
Yes. Yes.
That's what's so beautiful about the Piscean age and the Aquarian age is that we will never go back to the Piscean again.
No, that's done. Welcome home to Aquarius. And you know, Del, I can attest to the fact that when I heard my cousin Donna at the Cracker Barrel restaurant out on the Lanai, out on the front porch of Cracker Barrel there in Georgia, and I thought
that.
Exactly. She pulled up in her Jeep and she got out and I looked at her and I'm like, yep, that's my relative. But when I walked out there to hug her in the middle of the Cracker Barrel parking lot, she hugged me and she said, welcome home.
What happened to you?
Well, I don't know who was screaming louder, my inner child, right? Or me. But Donna was the first one that I met physically, and she's, welcome home. You're home.
Wow.
And I had been to Georgia, of course. That's where I was born, and I spent my early childhood in the South. And I've always known that Georgia is my home. But to have somebody say to me, welcome home, you're home, brought a comfort to my soul, just like it did for this young man, Chue,
right,
that I certainly will never forget. And there will be a bond between you and he that will never go away. And I mean, obviously I can't speak for my cousin Donna, but that moment there at Cracker Barrel in the parking lot and then out on the front porch and on the bench there was a bonding moment that brought me to what's next and made me feel safe about what's next. To your point, Sandy.
Exactly. And it's interesting because when I did get out to California, I navigated through the intent of finding where I was to land. I drove through Santa Barbara for the first time in a little Carmen Ghia, a pea green Carmen Ghia, and saw those mountains and felt that the vibration of Santa Barbara was home. Those mountains looked at me, that ocean captivated me, and I literally thought, this is my home in California.
That's beautiful.
And it's that place where my bones felt, and it was the beginning of the visceral experience of what I was experiencing as a child, living in downtown Connecticut, New England, looking at Zorro via Disney, and the adobe, the stucco, the Spanish, the horses, the arid, all this stuff. And I found out when I went to Majorca and Santa Barbara look exactly the same. So something in the earth of that is so deep inside me that when I hit California, it was like, out of all of California, no matter how much I love looking at San Francisco, much more than being in it, I love looking at it.
Mm-hmm. Isn't it interesting that sometimes we have to travel back in time to be brought to the now?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. And the second time I felt that home was Okamura, sitting in downtown Ocate, nowhere, USA, New Mexico. It was like, oh my God, I had to leave Santa Barbara to get to New Mexico, to get to Geneva, because again, Spirit was like, pack your bags, Sandy, you're going. It's like, San Francisco, no, you're going to Geneva. And those dots aligned to the next, you're in the next.
Mm-hmm.
Next, you're in the next. Next, you're in the next. And it collects like a string of pearls. I mean, maybe that's why my pearls are always so important to me when I wear them, and when they, it's like, it lets me know each episode is a pearl.
Mm-hmm.
And each one is completely independent.
Yes. I like that.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Me too.
Sometimes we do, and sometimes we're taken to places we never, ever expected to go in order to eventually be brought into the now and to understand the now fully. And as an adopted person, I look at the miracles and the people that I've met and the people that are my family that prepared me for meeting my ancestors, for meeting my biological family, the family that I have, Del Marie, Barbara, Lily, all that they taught me and continue to teach me that would prepare me for the conversation inside the Cracker Barrel with Donna, when Donna said, well, you do realize that where our family is Seminole. And then the conversation with Aunt Dot, who said, your granddaddy, my daddy, was a Cherokee man. I would not have had, I know I wouldn't have had the education, the experiences that would have prepared me for what Mama Dot and Donna shared with me that weekend. And so I look at this amazing tapestry of, I call them my beloveds, right? Well, and you, when I said to you, geez, Sandy, I don't know about New England. But you know what? New England kind of reminds me of England. And you looked at me and you said, well, that's why they call it New England. Right?
With the top down, flying down the road.
Right? And Lily was with us too.
Yeah.
And having that conversation about New England, only to find out that, well, Donna, I don't know if you know, but George Washington is one of our uncles. And so it goes, and so on and on and on. The tapestry and the weave is astonishing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's that place of brilliance.
Yeah.
That when the next really is present, that it allows you to know that you may have residue from the past,
mm-hmm.
but you're not a victim of it.
Mm-mm. No.
And that to me is part of the beauty of being able to do the work, that we can be a victim in the moment of what we're in. We can be victimized by it. But when that next does come, we can heal what has been victimized. We can heal what was entrenched in the I don't know, or I have no imprint, there's no mirror.
Yeah.
And the next is literally that opportunity to be embraced, just like within you say, by the blood.
Yeah.
The blood of spirit, the blood of soul, the blood of dignity in our humanness.
Yeah.
Because at this point, our blood almost runs through every single one of us.
Yeah. I know every so often, I don't know, I guess every 3 weeks my Aunt Gwen calls. And she and I have the best conversations, and every time she calls, always, she will ask me about Del Marie, and she'll ask me about Barbara, and she'll ask me about being at Wounded Knee, and we'll have these great long conversations, and because as it turns out that her love for Native America has always been one of the things at the forefront of her life. And she's never been able to experience that. So sometimes I think I had to travel that way in order to have those conversations, to serve her in that way. And I remember saying to her, Aunt Gwen, last time she called me a couple weeks ago, oh my God, we were giggling and carrying on for about an hour. And at the end of it, I said to her, I love you. And she said, well, darling, I love you too. And we had this interesting talk about politics. We're on opposite ends of the spectrum, but we love one another dearly. And I think to myself, isn't it wonderful, Sandy? Because you're kind of like this. I'm like when I call myself a parachute person. Sometimes I just dive off the cliff. Right? I dive off the cliff, much to the chagrin of my very Taurus friend Darlene, who says, I don't know how you do that.
Mm-hmm.
But one of the things I trust about coming into the now is the fact that if I take that leap, there's going to be a net. And I have always found since literally the moment of my birth, that the net has always appeared for me.
Right.
And it has appeared in ways and within people that only my soul knew.
Right.
And so taking the leap of faith into what's next, what's now, really provides extraordinary experiences for the soul. I mean, what would you add to that, Sand, as we're wrapping up tonight?
Well, one of my adventures that I'll never, ever, 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 ever forget is when literally Sir Charles said, everybody get ready, Sandy's leaving for Switzerland in a year and a half. And how that leap of faith was my agreement to be a part of my spirituality in the devotion to it, not the obligation to it.
Mm.
And in that devotion to it, to know that something told me, but the rest was kind of blind. Because the voice said, do it, and now we have a year and a half to do it. And each step that tried to resist going actually brought me closer to it and insisted that I see how close I was to getting there. And then I remember sitting on the plane, realizing I'm going to a country I have no idea about. I luckily met one person 3 weeks before I'm going, and I'm about to land. And talk about next is now. As soon as I got into the car with my friend to go to her apartment, it was everything fell into place because something was so out of place for her.
Mm-hmm.
Her chaos became my answers.
Mm.
And it was amazing how you just don't get on in a car and drive back home when you're in Switzerland.
Right.
And not knowing the language, not knowing. But then when I saw it, interestingly enough, talk about Santa Barbara, when I saw this friend of mine said, I'll pick you up at the airport. And I met her 3 weeks, literally, before I was going to go. And she was going to live in Lausanne. She sent me a postcard. And the Lake Geneva, from the view of Lausanne, was the cove of Santa Barbara.
Mm.
And it was again, there's the embrace, there's the water, there's the mountains, there's the visual love saying, come here, this is where you continue.
That's beautiful.
And it was being able to see it that I went, I can do that.
Mm-hmm. And
the next called, and when I got there, it was, I don't know where I am, but I know I am here. And then we start to exist. And it gives us something that we didn't expect, and that's a surprise. It knew we were coming.
Yeah. Isn't that marvelous? By the way, Lady Hawk in the chat room says, I miss Sir Charles, to which I responded, me too. So maybe through the School of Sacred Studies, we could have an evening with Sir Charles in the future. Thank you for bringing that up, Lady Hawk.
I got shivers now.
Mm-hmm.
Well, okay.
Okay, Sand, we're at the top of the hour, and
okay.
It is now. So with that.
Yeah. Okay. Everybody, thank you so much. And again, my soul to Reggie. I love you all. I love you, Dana. And have a great night, everybody.
Blessings be, everybody. Get out there and shine. Good night, Sand.
Good night.